Hello chess friends and welcome to your Tata Chess channel and welcome to a new day of the Tata Steel Masters in 2022. We're now in the round 3 of the super event and we're following really beautiful game that was played by the Daniil Dubov and Vidit Santosh Gujrathi. This game I think has it all. First of all, we had some theoretical novelties, then we have some beautiful middle game strategies, then we have in some sacrifices, and of course, like in chess, there have to be also a little bit inaccuracies, mistakes and blunders. That's of course part of the game, so that's why I think this was a complete game that shows the beauty of chess, and I think we'll enjoy that for sure. So let's check out now what happened. As I said, Daniil Dubov with the white pieces, and here's Vidit Santosh Gujrathi with the black pieces, and Daniil Dubov opened with the move e4. Here Vidit's response was e5. We have knight to f3, and after move knight to c6 we have bishop to c4. The Italian game is on the board, and okay, we have now the two knights defense. Most of the times you can go into the knight's attack. In my opinion, it's still one of the sharpest lines of the Italian game. You can check it out if you may be watching not so often, maybe you're not familiar with the concepts of the Italian game. I think knight to g5 is also perfectly fine, but here in the continuation we have now the normal system, the classical system, here with the move d3, fixing now the pawn structure in the center. Then in the near future again we can expect c3 d4 as the main strategical goal, as the main breakthrough in the center of the board. So here in the continuation we have bishop to c5. Now the game transposes into the gioco piano system because both bishops are out. So whenever we have the symmetrical setup of the bishop pair here, then of course it's a gioco piano game here. So in the continuation we have c3, we have d6 here by Vidit, and now bishop to g5 here by Daniil Dubov. Okay, this pin may annoy you, but in Italian games, pinning your opponent in an early stage of the game is actually not the best of ways, because many times this bishop can be kicked with h6 g5, and then even with, I don't know, h4 h5 g4, black could make progress even without castling. So many times you see also in the Italian game that one player will stay with the king a little bit in the center. You should not forget about it, because you may get surprised by this opponent's idea. So that's why here first h6 was played by Vidit. Now basically white has to make a decision. Here in the continuation, if you retreat to d2 or e3, then you don't gain anything because you have already played with your bishop once. So you want to stay some kind of in some kind of an active way, so that's why you want to stay on this diagonal. And here in the continuation we have bishop to h4 played by by Daniil Dubov. After move bishop to h4 we have now a5. What black doesn't want to get is also here some kind of a push on the queen side. Black could get maybe kicked away with the potential b4 move, then also with the move b5, but then white could gain huge space advantage, and white could also gain here a couple of tempi against black's minor pieces. So after move a5 now comes one of the critical moments of the game. Here Daniil Dubov will introduce to us a really beautiful theoretical novelty. At least I'm not seeing any games in the database, but I think it's sort of a move that is provocative, but it's actually quite good. I like it because here after move knight to a3, okay, this is really not the best suggested move by the top engine, but when it comes to positional understanding, and I think when it comes to opening the position up a little bit, I think knight to a3 is perfectly fine, because here black has to make an immediate decision. Of course you can play something like a4 and then knight to a3, but with the move a4 would be loss of tempo. Now with the move a3 we're saying to black, basically, if you want to double up my pawn structure you should do it, because if you don't do that immediately, I'm going to jump with the knight on c2, and then I would have a beautiful control of the d4 square. So it's a faster preparation. Of course, as I said, a4 knight to a3 is possible, then you don't risk this double pawn structure, but a4 is a little bit slower, and I liked here really Daniil Dubov's choice here, but Vidit decided to simply take bishop takes a3. We have b takes a3, and see now the only thing that black gained is of course a double pawn structure, but white has, I think, a decent compensation, because white is here also a beautiful open b file, and with the bishop pair on the board with a potential open b file, I think this is playable for white, although it was a risky choice by Daniil Dubov. But it was sort of a theoretical novelty that I think bothers black now, because look at this bishop's activity. Bishop on c4 perfectly fine, bishop to h4 perfectly fine, d4 could come in the near future, rook to b1, castling, rook to e1. So the setup that white is gaining here is, I think, a beautiful compensation for this messed up pawn structure on the a file. So now here we have queen to e7, although probably bishop to e6 can be immediate opportunity. Like in the usual Gioco Piano games, you want to compete here against this bishop on the board, so that's why bishop to e6 I think it would be also natural idea to get rid of the annoying bishop pair that white has. But okay, here with the move queen to e7, here Vidit probably prepared the move bishop to e6, and then you don't have to mess up your pawn structure with the move f takes e6. You can of course then recapture with the queen. So here the continuation, we have now castling by Dubov, and now knight to b8, and probably I've analyzed now this game at home, and I was wondering why Vidit played the move knight to b8. Probably he wanted to play knight to d7 and wanted to play much more freely with the queen, because he wanted to have some kind of an opportunity to recapture maybe this knight on f6 with this other knight, and maybe his preparation was also to get this square c6 maybe for the pawn, and then to prepare some d5 ideas. I'm not sure. So as I said, it seems like a strange idea, but nothing went wrong here for black. Maybe this was again not the suggested move by the top engine, but it is an interesting idea, and I always like more some games when we see really interesting ideas in chess than rather just to see maybe the best suggested line by top engines. We can agree, I think, that both players have introduced us really beautiful ideas so far. Of course, not many of us would retreat to b8, but now the game becomes really wild. It has, I think, a new dynamics here all over the board. So knight to b8 here again, maybe as we said, bishop to e6 would be one of the best suggested line, or here bishop to g4 can be also an opportunity, but then it leads into a complicated line with h3, maybe bishop to h5, then g4, then black can also play g5, bishop to g3, bishop to g6. So probably this is not something that you want to get for both sides, such a messed up pawn structure on the king side. Okay, as we said, knight to b8, we can discuss it also later why these players are playing this retreating moves, but in my opinion it's a decent idea here by Vidit. So here d4 immediately played by Daniil Dubov, and Daniil Dubov played here really a provocative move. Again, d4 is such a tempting move, because if you play something like g5 in order to maybe grab somehow here the pawn on e4, then it becomes really wild, because after bishop to g3, this was really a tricky preparation by Dubov. Then you could maybe take, but then you get this one, d takes e5, and if you take, for instance, the bishop knight to g3, then f takes g3 happens, and if you play d takes e5, the problem is this one, knight to e5 is happening, and the problem is if you play queen to e5, then you lose simply here the pawn on f7. So this would be a position that you have to resign. Bishop to f7, then maybe get queen to f3, rook to e1, getting both of these rooks on the e file, on the f file. This was really a beautiful prepared tactic here by Daniil Dubov. So after move d4, here Vidit stuck to this plan. He played knight to d7, because now there is the threat, of course, to play g5 and then knight to e5, because we're getting a new defender into the game. And okay, here Daniil Dubov has the several opportunities. He can play rook to e1 in order to prepare here maybe even somehow to open the e file, but the most important thing is that he's protecting his e4 square. He can also play knight to d2, which is also perfectly fine. Then he could go into some ideas like f3, bishop to f2, and then he could have, I think, again a beautiful setup with the bishop pair. Here again white is slightly better, but Daniil Dubov played again a tempting move. He played now rook to b1, and he's now finally challenging Vidit. He's saying, okay, this dude, this is the last time I'm giving you the chance to take the pawn on e4. You have to play now g5 if you of course want to take it into the next couple moves. You're not taking that pawn for sure. So that's exactly what happened. Now finally Vidit played g5, and after bishop to g3 we have knight to e4, we have now queen to c2, and now f5. F5 wasn't actually the best of moves. You don't want to expose your king further, because I think you have chances maybe to castle on the king side. So instead of this move f5, maybe finally knight takes g3, then after f takes g3, here you could maybe counterattack. That was the most important thing about this move, knight to d7. You see now the bishop loses another tempo, and if you play something like bishop to b5, then we can cover with bishop to d7, bishop takes queen to d7, and after something like d takes e5, we can play queenside castle here from black perspective, and I think everything is pretty much fine here for black. So as I said, this would be playable, but this move f5, although you want to of course support your centralized knight on e4, it's not so good, because you're giving also some counterattack opportunities here for white, especially on the light squares. The king is slightly naked here in the position. So both players really played wild moves. After move f5, here in the continuation, Dubov simply takes, d takes e5, we have d takes e5, and now rook from f to e1. Now finally Dubov wants to open the e file. In the continuation, we have knight takes g3. If you play, for instance, something like rook to f8, in order maybe to include your rook into the game, then rook to e4 is also an opportunity. I wanted to show you what was also here Daniil Dubov tactical preparation, because after rook to e4, we have f takes e4, and now queen to e4 is very dangerous here. Queen to g6 could happen. We have still the opportunity to take out the pawn on e5. We can also include the rook into the game, and the problem is now this rook on a8 is simply too far away from reaction. It's almost like that white is playing with an extra piece here in this position. So that's why you have to be careful. As I said, after move rook to e1, here the Vidit finally took knight takes g3, and after h takes g3, we have now e4. That was the only way to lock somehow the damn e file, because this was really wild what Vidit did so far, staying with the king in the center of the board, staying with the queen on the e file, and of course Daniil Dubov uses the e file attack in order to make progress further in the game. So after move e4, here beautiful move by Daniil Dubov, g4. g4 is of course tempting again, because if you play f takes g4, then you get rook to e4, then this pawn of course gets deflected from the square e4, and now you lose simply the queen, and the game is over. So after g4, you have to protect. Again, here a correct move by Vidit. He played knight to c5, but you see again the king is stuck in the center. Really wild position here for black. So after move knight to c5, we have knight to d4 played by Vidit, and pardon me, by Dubov, and now rook to f8. The idea about this move is of course obvious, because we want to include somehow this rook on the 6th rank and protect maybe the b6 square, maybe somehow play b6 ourselves, then to cover with the bishop. So you cannot castle anymore on the king side, and castling on the queen side is also risky because the b file is open. So I think black needs to stay simply with the king in the center, although it's a messed up position. So here in the continuation, we have g takes f5, but now after bishop to f5, here we have a beautiful tactical shot by Daniil Dubov, rook to b7. And the rook to b7 is really wild, because if you take knight takes b7, then it's not so good because of bishop to b5, and bishop to b5 leads now into complicated game for black, because first of all, if you cover, then it's not good. Then again, you get this idea of rook to e4. If you get with your king here on d8, then it's not good. You get knight to c6, the fork. So the only way to escape from any tactics is to play maybe something like king to f7, but again, knight to f5 is, I think, simply winning the game, and this is something that black should resign, especially because of some other threats on h6. Rook to e4 is again an opportunity, so bishop to come into the game. So this is something simply a bad position here for black. So a very beautiful tactical shot here by Daniil Dubov, rook to b7, and here Vidit played rook to f6. Normal idea, he wants to include, as I said, his rook into the defense, but now queen to b1 was a huge mistake by Daniil Dubov. It's not a mistake that is making now black win suddenly the game, but here a better idea is simply to play rook to b5. Rook to b5 is normal retreating move, nothing special is happening. Still, it's not the position in which white is winning for sure, but here this was the only good move, I think, here for white in order to make his progress further, because here the only way to protect the position is to again kick away somehow the rook with the move c6, then rook to b6, and even after bishop to d7, maybe now queen to b1 would be a good idea to finally create this rook and queen battery. But the most important thing about this scenario is that the rook is not hanging. But after move queen to b1, Vidit accepts the challenge, plays knight to b7, we have queen to b7, and now rook to d8, and here after move knight to f5, rook to f5. This was again part of Daniil Dubov's calculation, but actually it's a drawish line. The evaluation here is 0.0, so the only way that someone wins the game is a huge blunder by black or white. Here after move rook to e4, we have rook to d1. Here Vidit plays really the correct moves, because he understands now the position. If he makes slight inaccuracy, then the game is over. Rook to d1, correct move, correct counterplay here, king to h2, and now with the move rook to e5, that's the only way to protect your queen. Queen to c6, and we have now king to d8. Again, a beautiful move. Whatever you do, I think if you play something like, I don't know, king to f8, then you get queen to h6, and there's not a good way to cover yourself. So this is not possible, because if you cover, then we can take, and then also the rook is hanging. So that's why after move queen to c6, here Vidit plays the correct move. First you have to get with the king in the center, which is a kind of an unnatural decision, because what you want to get, actually you want to get out of the mess, you want to go maybe to the king side, but we have seen that it is not possible. But now after move rook to d8, there is only one more check here that white can make. But now king to d7, again after bishop to b5, here king to e6. That was a beautiful path here that Vidit found, how to escape with the king. Bishop to b5, now we have a new check, and after queen to f6, here king to queen to h8, again a new check, king to f5, and now comes the critical moment of the game. So here Daniil Dubov played really a bad move, and it cost him here the game, because he played now the move f3, and f3 is a huge blunder. The only way to make it out of this mess is to play again a new check. The problem about the check queen to c8 is that actually black cannot take cannot take the rook on e4, because you get here checkmated, you get queen to g4. Even if you escape here, then we get queen to c4, and after king to d6, here you get queen to c6, which was a checkmate. So let's go back here. Instead of this move queen to after move queen to c8, instead of this move king to e4, you have to again play king to f6 or queen to g6, and again here with queen to h8, the game would lead into perpetual. Whatever you do, pardon me, here if you play queen to f5, again we would have the opportunity to play queen to c8, and again this will be probably a draw. So but after move f3, here Vidit understood that suddenly it's not a drawish position anymore. Now he can finally take rook takes e4, we have f takes e4, king to e4. Okay, you have your fun, you have one check, but now after move king to e3, no more checks are possible. Here what Daniil Dubov tried to do is cut off here this diagonal for the king, and he's trying to attack the king on dark horse. That's exactly how you should, of course, attack your opponent's king. Whenever you attack it with queen and bishop, then the bishop is aiming on light course, for instance, and the queen is aiming on dark course. But it's not such a position anymore. The evaluation is +10 here for black, so black is winning. Here queen to e5, we have first a check, we have g3, now g4, cutting off potential escape routes here for the king, and after queen to a7, king to d2. In this position here Daniil Dubov resigned. So queen to f2, if you play one, for instance, some checks, then king to c1 is possible, and then king to d2, although you can probably also cover with the queen. Whatever you do, it's game over here for white. So great game, I think. Unfortunately Daniil Dubov didn't see this tactics in the end, but really sharp game, sharp Italian with beautiful theoretical novelties, with a beautiful exchange sacrifice, then with some beautiful tactics in the end. But as I said, mistakes, blunders are of course part of the chess game. Daniil Dubov makes them too, of course. He's still a great tactician, but he missed out, unfortunately, here some wild tactics. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Interesting game for sure, which also makes huge and complicated things in the tournament, because Vidit has now I think 2 points after 3 rounds, so he's playing a really great tournament. And Magnus Carlsen also drew his game today with the black pieces against Jan-Krzysztof Duda, so we'll see what will happen. Still 10 more rounds are to be played, and I think we'll have great moments of this super event. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game like I did. If you want to see our previous analysis of the game between Magnus Carlsen and Anish Giri, here's the link of that game. It was a beautiful exchange sacrifice by Magnus Carlsen. You can also check it out, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.